So we're gonna relax my video.
Here, Happy New Year's, guys.
Huh. Oh. Today we're gonna relax Zack flims.
When you press down, a hollow metal tube punches through the cherry, removing the hard pit.
No, let's go back. Here.
It would paint.
No, here.
You sliced open a giant cockroach, squeezed inside, and sealed yourself in. Could you survive a deadly nuclear fallout? Well,
No.
when a nuke explodes, the radiation travels through the air. But as it passes through different materials, it loses concentration, meaning it will eventually run out. Now, cockroaches are mostly made of water, which would quickly block the radiation. And it would only have to be about the size of a minivan to protect you. But the heat from the explosion would still boil the cockroach's blood, roasting you right inside its body. If you sliced open, they pulled chunks of flesh from the mummy, then crushed it into a powder. Next, they added tree sap to create a smooth brown cream. The result was a paint called Mummy Brown. Painters used it for flesh tones, and it became incredibly popular. But when the paint makers ran out of mummies, their supply ran low and lost popularity. And eventually, they stopped producing the paint. When artists discovered what it was made out of, they were horrified. One famous painter even buried his tube in the garden, out of respect for the dead, according to the legend. They pulled chunks of flesh from the mummy, then crushed it into a powder. Next, they added tree sap to create a smooth brown cream. The result was they filled a jar with an oily mix, added a fat wick, then lit it and launched it at enemy ships.
Oh
now, this oily mix was called Greek fire, and when it broke on impact, it would spew outward in flaming drops. And these drops would spread across the deck, sticking to wood and rope. The mixture kept burning even on water, so the flames couldn't be put out. Each blob became another patch of fire, spreading across the ship. They filled a jar with an oily mix, added a fat wick, then lit it and launched it at enemy ships. He bet money on when the man would die. If he died within a month, the person in charge would win the money. If he died between 1 and 6 months, the stranger would get the money. And this betting wasn't rare. People across the city gambled on their dying neighbors and even their own family members. Even doctors joined in on the game, seeing how much money they could make. But police started to investigate, and the game eventually stopped. He bet money on when the man would die. If he died within a month, the person in charge would win the money. If he died between 1 and 6 months, the stranger would get the money. And this betting wasn't rare. People across the city gambled on their dying neighbors and even their own family members. Even doctors joined in on the game, seeing how much money they could make. But police started to investigate, and the game eventually...
They're so rich.
If you jumped through one portal, you would fall out from the other one.
What?
And if you put them back to back, it would just feel like you're moving through normal space. But what if you pushed one into the other? Well, the portal has to go somewhere. So, as it enters the second one, the vanishing end would start coming out of itself again and again. And if you were halfway through it as it went in, it would break you apart until you became a jumbled mess of body parts. If you jumped through one portal, you would fall out.
Then how's it gonna kill you when at the first part, bruh?
When you press down, a hollow metal tube punches through the cherry, removing the hard pit. Then, if you crack the pit open, you'll find an even smaller seed inside. Now, soak a paper towel with water before placing the seed on top, adding a dusting of cinnamon to prevent mold from growing. Then, fold the wet towel over the seed and seal it inside a plastic bag, placing it inside your fridge. And in just about 12 weeks, a tiny root will push out of the seed. Remove the bag and place it inside a pot with dirt, making sure that the root is eyes pointing down. Then cover it with dirt and add a small splash of water. Eventually, a tree will push up through the soil,
A
growing
tree?
a cherry to start
What do
the
you
whole
mean?
process again. When you press down, a hollow metal tube punches through the cherry. They filled a jar with they pulled chunk. If you sliced open, they would paint white strips. When a taser is fired, 2 darts shoot towards you with copper wires connecting them to the gun. And when the darts pierce your skin, it creates a circuit. This causes a battery inside the taser to send electricity through the wires. And when it reaches you, the shock makes your muscles contract uncontrollably, which paralyzes you until the taser is turned off. But if police spray you with tear gas first, they can stick to your clothes. And if they use a taser on you, the electric charge could ignite the gas, causing you to burst into flames. He thought taking a bath would make him
Let's go back to the
he
bed.
refused to wash, saying the dirt kept him healthy. Instead, he left his home and dug a shallow hole to sleep in. He ate only roadkill and smoked animal poop out of a pipe. And instead of cutting his hair, he burned it over a fire. Over the years, he became the dirtiest man in the world, until someone finally convinced him to take a bath, and he died shortly after. He thought taking a bath would make him sick. The fire was lit beneath a sealed cauldron, boiling the water inside. And this caused steam to build, which pushed hard against the walls. It traveled up through pipes on the sides and into a metal sphere, and was released out through 2 curved pipes sticking out in opposite directions of the sphere, forcing it to spin in circles as the steam was released. Now, this was used in Rome just as a trick to impress crowds, centuries before anyone realized it could actually power machines. The fire was lit beneath a sealed cauldron, boiling the water. He found the injured fish on the ocean floor, and instead of letting it die, he fed it crabs every day. He gave it gentle kisses on its head as it slowly recovered. When it healed, the man watched it swim away, thinking this was his goodbye. But the next day, he noticed a familiar shape coming closer. Seconds passed as they looked at each other. Then the fish rushed over, bumping itself against his hand so he could pet it. 30 years later, whenever he goes down to dive, the fish is still there to greet his old friend. He found the As he chatted with the stranger, 2 people carrying a door walked between them, blocking his view. The stranger quickly swapped places with someone else. The new person picked up the conversation as if nothing changed, and the man didn't even notice. And 7 out of 15 people never realized they were talking to a completely different person. In another test, people watched someone leave money on a table and walk out. Then another person came in, stole the money, and left. But as she turned a corner, a different woman took her place. Barely anyone noticed it was a different person, and about 25% of them identified the wrong woman in a lineup, proving just how unreliable our memories can be. As he chatted with the stranger, as he drove, the car's AI scanned his face and flashed red, warning him to wake up. He was confused because he wasn't sleeping and tried sitting up straighter to look less tired. But nothing worked until he forced his eyes to open super wide. When he let them go back to normal, the alarm rang again, going off 20 times during the trip. You see, the AI was designed to beep whenever it couldn't see the iris. But the man naturally had heavy eye folds, which are when the eyelid's skin and fat overlap near the nose, forming a smooth flap that covers part of his iris, making the AI think he was sleeping. As he drove, they designed this fire truck to he loaded each of the 24 barrels, added a trail of gunpowder, and aimed it out of the window, waiting to assassinate the king as he passed below. He then lit the gunpowder, which fired all the guns at once. The force blew apart the guns and tore the man's face and hands as the bullets rained down on the villagers, even hitting the king's horse in the neck. But the king was barely scratched on his forehead, and the man was soon captured for his crime. He loaded each of the 24 barrels, added a trail of gunpowder, and aimed it out of the window, waiting to assassinate the king as he passed below. He then lit the gunpowder, which fired all the guns at once. The force blew apart the guns and tore the man's face and hands as the bullets rained down. They designed this fire truck to have 2 heads, one in the front and one in the back. You see, years earlier, a big rig caught fire in the middle of a 7-mile-long tunnel. This quickly caused a traffic jam, blocking fire trucks from entering. And the blaze lasted over 2 days, killing 39 people and injuring 11 others. To stop this from happening again, the 2-headed fire truck was invented. 2 drivers control it from either cabin, allowing it to drive in either direction without reversing. It can even crab walk through traffic, meaning it can enter tight spaces and put out fires before it's too late. They designed this fire truck. He loaded each of the
Still spending time reading financial reports.
If you slide your cup side to side fast, you can catch just the syrup, making your drink taste super sweet. You see, when you push the button, gas pressure turns on behind the wall, and a pump sucks syrup from a sealed bag inside a cardboard box, causing it to slowly move through a plastic tube toward the nozzle.
Coca-Cola and no Sprite or anything else. Get water inside of it. I do that sometimes.
The syrup and carbonated water. If you murder someone and then confess the murder to a priest, they cannot tell anyone ever. You see, it's called the seal of confession, and breaking it will get you kicked out of the church forever. But what if you confess that you're about to kill the priest's own mother? Well, the priest still has to stay silent. He can't warn her, can't call the police. He can't even sit outside her house to protect her, because any action could reveal what he heard. But what if any action could reveal what he heard? But what if a priest does break the seal of confession and then confesses that to another priest? Well, that second priest also can't tell anyone, because now that confession is sealed too. If you murder someone, how fast would an unbreakable merry-go-round need to spin to liquefy your brain? Well, a normal person can push one at around 9 miles per hour. Fast enough to make you dizzy, but not deadly. To reach deadly speeds, you would need to attach a jet engine to the side. You would then have to strap yourself in to keep from flying off. It would spin fast enough to generate over 50,000 Gs of force. That's enough to rupture blood vessels and snap bones. Your brain would slam into the side of your skull over and over until the tissue tears apart from the inside and eventually becomes fully liquefied.
Liquefied? Oh my god.
This is a robbery. Hand over your money.
This is so bang mode. Never watching her again.
The bones are carefully removed from the chicken, which is then seasoned and stacked on a duck. Then the duck is rolled up and placed on top of the turkey. This is a robbery. The bones are carefully removed from the chicken, which is then seasoned and stacked on a duck. Then the duck is rolled up and placed on top of the turkey, and any extra spaces are filled with stuffing. Next, the edges of the turkey are sewn shut, while tightly wrapped strings hold the meat together. It's roasted for several hours at a low temperature to cook evenly. And as it heats up, the fat melts and the flavors combine. Finally, the turducken is carved, revealing the layers of meat inside. The bones are carefully He got in, and the barrel fell from...
Struggling with Wi-Fi dead?
You crack your knuckle, the space in between the joint stretches, and this drops the pressure, forming gas bubbles that suddenly pop and make that satisfying crack sound. But the bubbles take about 30 minutes to come back, which is why it's impossible to crack the same knuckle twice in a row. And if you use too much force, you might just press on the wrong spot and dislocate your finger. When you crack
I
your
cannot
knuckle,
even.
the space in between the joint stretches, and this drops the pressure, forming gas bubbles that suddenly his stomach grew into a potbelly over time.
Potbelly.
So he exercised regularly and didn't drink beer to try and get rid of it. But even after losing 34 pounds, it
34?
was still there. Doctors told him it was nothing, but he demanded a full-body scan. And they found a 30-pound tumor wrapped around his kidney. It took 6 hours of surgery to remove it,
6
along
hours?
with the kidney, but he
Kidney.
fully recovered.
Kid,
His stomach grew
and
into
there's
a
a new
potbelly
kidney.
over.
Mom, are you there?
If you only had
Mom, are you there?
Okay, I'm
Who are
gonna.
you waiting?
and needed to turn on a flashlight, you could tear off a strip of foil, fold it until it's the same size as the battery, and roll it with your fingers until it's round. Then place the working battery at the positive end of the flashlight with the foil roll at the negative end. You see, electricity needs to have a continuous path in order to work. So when you close the battery compartment and press the switch, the foil completes the circuit, letting the electricity flow from the battery to the light bulb and turning your flashlight back on. He found a shoe on. The wild pigs all gather around the bait that is sitting beneath a huge metal ring hanging in the air. It's fitted with a live camera that sends an alert to the farmer's phone. And once he makes sure all the boars are inside the trap, he presses the button and the ring drops, snapping into a full circle around the entire herd. You see, in traditional traps, one boar bumps into a tripwire. Then the gate slams shut, trapping only the few that made it inside, while the rest escape into the woods. And those survivors teach the others to avoid that trap forever, meaning most of the herd keeps growing faster than they can be stopped. This device fixes that by waiting until every pig is inside before the trap is triggered. Wild pigs.
Fortnite is finally back on the Google Play Store in the US. Don't believe me? Just search Fortnite and download it. But what can you play in Fortnite? You can try Steal the Brain Rot. It's really fun and plays well on mobile, and you can take it anywhere. So drop into Fortnite on the Google Play Store in the US and check out Steal the Brain Rot
This is
now.
not that
Fortnite is
deep.
finally back.
He found a shoe on the beach, picked it up, and realized there was a rotting foot still inside. And soon, dozens of other feet started appearing on the beach. Now, people thought it was a serial killer with some weird obsession, or a plane crash that somehow chopped off a bunch of feet. Others even thought it was the work of aliens. But when they tested the DNA, they linked it to people who had reportedly drowned. You see, bodies sink as they decompose, but the soles on sneakers float in water. So when the body breaks down and the feet detach from the ankles, the shoe floats them up before they wash up
show
on the
that
beaches. He found a shoe on the wild pigs.
Fortnite is finally back.
If you went blind, your brain would stop taking in signals from your eyes. But in rare cases, your brain could just make up images instead.
Oh.
You might think you're pouring into a glass while spilling it across the table.
Okay. When I get a cup, if I'm blind, yeah, get a cup, then I will go to the sink. To a sink. Sink.
Step
Or
forward.
take a picture.
They shoved the tube
No,
down
video.
its throat. If you went, your brain could just make up images instead. You might think you're pouring into a glass while spilling it across the table. Or step forward on what looks like solid ground, only
Stairs.
to fall down a flight of stairs. You see, the brain is putting in fake images to fill in the lost connection. Now, no one really knows why it does this, and while the condition is rare, it can be extremely dangerous.
Deadly.
They shove the tube down its throat, then pump it full of food. And they do this 3 times a day, forcing up to a pound of food down its throat each time. Now, this is done to quickly fatten the duck's liver before killing them and cooking the
No.
The tube can choke them until they suffocate, or even rip holes in their food pipe. And since it's way too much food, they struggle to walk, which is why this practice is now illegal in some countries. He shoved the...
You want to make a game, but coding just too hard. AI creates casual games.
He fled from police after shoplifting and hid in a stranger's house, where a 9-year-old... She dove off the dock, but a broken cord from a nearby boat leaked electricity into the water. It rushed into her and froze her body mid-swim, slowly killing her as she sank into the ocean. You see, bad wiring on boats spreads electrical currents in the water like an invisible net. And even the tiniest shock could paralyze your muscles and body, which would quickly make you drown. So even if it looks safe, you should never swim near a docked boat. She dove...
Okay.
They attached the wires to the ferret before sending it running through a pipe, carrying a trail of cables behind it. You see, they wanted to host the concert at the Royal Park, but the pipes underneath were too long to push the cables through with rods. And they weren't allowed to dig up the ground, so they just brought in some ferrets. You see, ferrets naturally hunt in underground tunnels, so they used meat to guide them as they threaded the wires throughout the park, just in time to save the New Year's Eve concert. They attached... The shopping mall rose on every side of her small house, leaving it surrounded by concrete walls and cranes. You see, developers had offered her $1 million to sell her house,
You should
so
pick
they
that
could build
nearby
the mall,
another
but
house.
she refused, saying she wouldn't move for any price. So they just built it around her.
How I
Soon
did
her house
it.
became famous, and fans tattooed it on their skin as a symbol of determination. Now, the project manager stopped by often to check on construction, then just to check on her. They became friends. He brought her groceries and listened to her stories. She told him about spying on Nazis and even meeting Hitler himself. Now, no one knows how much of it was true, but he said her spirit was. And when she finally passed away, she left the house to him. The shopping mall rose on every side of her small house. They stuffed the rifle in between sandbags and tied 2 tins to the top and bottom, connecting the trigger. As the soda went into the cup, it flowed through a funnel and into a plastic tube that ran down his sleeve, and it drained into a secret reservoir in his bag. You see, Baja Blast was only sold in Taco Bells, so he came up with a plan and posted it online. And that's when other users jumped in to help. They offered tweets and improvements to the device until they had perfected the design together. He cut a hole in the bottom of the cup and used the tubing to connect it to the sealed container. While the empty cup looked normal from the outside, with a few refills, he stole gallons of soda without anyone noticing. Then he posted the video online, where it spread across the internet as Operation Soda Steal. As the soda went into the cup, it flowed. If you pour water into a hammer mold, freeze it, peel it out, and then try to hit a nail, it will shatter right away. Instead, use a mallet mold to spread the weight more evenly. Next, tear up a paper towel to spread on the bottom. This makes a mesh that holds the ice layers together. After that, stuff in cotton balls, which helps give the ice a sturdy structure, and lay 2 strings down the length of the hammer to keep the handle connected to the head. Finally, if you top it off with 1 more layer of paper towels before pouring in the water, you'll end up with a sturdy hammer that can crush a jawbreaker. If you pour water into a hammer mold, pulled the painting off the wall,
Finally,
and
no
found the
ads.
hidden room. But what they saw inside horrified them. You see, weeks earlier, a man tried calling his brother, and when a complete stranger picked up the phone, he immediately knew something was wrong. His neighbor also saw people going into the house with cleaning supplies, so he called the police. They went in, finding multiple homeless men living in his house, before uncovering the secret room with a single fish tank. Inside was the man's body, without his head or his hands. The police arrested 2 of the homeless men, but they were later released, and to this day, no one knows what actually happened. They pulled the painting off the wall and found a wire is carefully looped around the flea's tiny body using tweezers. Then the harness is tied to a cart, and every time the flea moves, the toy goes with it. On stage, the crowd would watch wagons roll and wheels spin, as if the fleas are trained performers. Now, some circuses would use glue to stick small instruments on the fleas. Then they would heat them up, causing them to squirm around to try and escape, which made it look like they were playing the instruments. The wire is carefully looped. Alexander the Great's body was sealed inside the tomb, but he may have still been alive. See, he should have decomposed, but as his body sat for 6 days before the funeral, some say it stayed perfectly preserved. Now, at the time, people thought this meant he was a god, but today, sucking creature off the fish, then stab its brain before squeezing out its blood. Blood would be boiled with red wine to make a sauce, while the rest of the lamprey was baked. It was then served to royalty, covered in the blood sauce. And this dish was eaten on Christmas Eve, when Christians weren't allowed to eat meat. You see, lamprey is fatty and meaty, even though it's technically a fish, making it a perfect loophole for rich people who wanted to eat meat when they shouldn't. It would yank the blood-sucking creature off the fish.
It probably tastes
stab
like
its brain. This holiday, he pressed the controls super fast and beat the same game for the 100th time. Now, he really wanted the new game, but it was just way too expensive. He got a text from his girlfriend, Mary. Let's not do gifts this year and just save our money instead. Sound good? Our money instead. Sound good? He glanced at her camera on the shelf. It had slipped from her hands weeks ago, causing a crack in the lens. And every photo she took since had a line running right through the middle. He really wanted to get her a new lens for Christmas, which means he needed extra cash. First, he walked dogs around the city. Then, he went around the neighborhood, shoveling snow. He delivered food throughout the night, even skipping meals just to save every dollar. But by Christmas Eve, he still didn't have enough. He looked down at his game console, his favorite thing, and knew what he had to do. He biked through the snow and sold it for just enough to buy Mary the new lens. On Christmas morning, he handed her a small box wrapped in newspaper. She teared up as she lifted it out of the box. Then she smiled and handed him a box of her own. Inside was the new game, the one that he had wanted all year. He was confused. How could she afford this? And that's when he noticed the empty space on the shelf where her camera used to sit.
that was a good
She
idea.
had sold it, just like he sold his game console. And even though they couldn't use their gifts, they both ended up with something better. He pressed the controls, he got into the shell, and the dome was locked in place. As he turned the head, R2-D2 did the same, but turning too far choked him with wires, so he had to be careful with his movements. They swapped in a smaller remote-controlled robot for scenes where R2 rolled in the swamps, while puppeteers used hidden wires to yank it around for complicated scenes, creating the illusion of a robot that's alive. He got into the ship. They loaded thousands of Christmas trees and set sail, even though a dangerous storm was coming. You see, he was known as Captain Santa, and he would set sail across the lake to deliver Christmas trees to waiting families. But this time, snow started falling, and the waves rocked the ship. The captain began to panic, raising a distress flag. A rescue boat was launched, but the trees were too heavy, and the ship sank before anyone could arrive. Captain Santa drowned, along with 9 other crew members. Christmas trees washed ashore for weeks after, and to this day, the Christmas trees still lay at the bottom of Lake Michigan. They loaded thousands
Lake
of Christmas
Michigan.
trees, and his plane was shot, and plastic shards from the windshield tore into his eyes. Now, at the hospital, the surgeon noticed something strange. You see, injuries like these usually cause swelling as your body tries to get rid of the foreign objects. But the plastic pieces didn't activate his immune system, meaning they figured if he could put this kind of plastic in someone's eyes, he could replace their damaged lens, curing their blindness. And he eventually invented the first permanent contacts. Now millions of people can see again, all thanks to one pilot's injury. His plane, the enemy bullet sliced right through his chin strap, knocking the helmet off his head. They were trapped in trenches just a few hundred feet apart, fighting each other for weeks on end. He had stopped thinking of them as men. They were just targets in the dark. But one day, for some reason, the gunfire stopped. For the first time in weeks, everything was still. In the quiet, he remembered what day it was. Christmas Eve. He lifted a lantern above the trench and began to sing a Christmas song. From across the field, another voice joined in. Then more. Enemy voices on both sides, all singing along. He stood up, climbed out of the trench, and stepped into the battlefield. Slowly, soldiers from both sides started to follow. They met in the middle, shaking hands on the ground right where their fellow soldiers had previously died. Some started sharing chocolate and showing photos of their families. They played football, traded souvenirs, and told each other stories. They even posed for photos together, because for once, they finally saw each other not as enemies, but as fellow men. When dawn broke, the letters came down the line. The Christmas truce was over. He returned to his trench, gripping the same rifle, and across the field, the men he had sung with the night before raised their guns too. The enemy bullet. If you hold a balloon over a candle, the flame will weaken the rubber and it'll pop instantly. But if you fill the balloon with water and lower it over the flame, the heat goes into the water instead of staying in the rubber. Then the water spreads the heat out before it can build up in one spot, acting like a shield around the rubber. This means the rubber never gets hot enough to melt, so the water-filled balloon They hid the poison inside a fake perfume bottle and put it on his door handle to kill him on contact. But the man was quickly taken to the hospital before the poison killed him. So they tossed the bottle into the trash. But months later, a man found it in a donation bin and gave the bottle to his partner. She sprayed it on her wrists, and the poison seeped into her skin, eventually shutting down her organs and killing her 8 days later. They hid. The animal is skinned and the hide is scraped clean. Next, tree bark is soaked in water until it turns dark. Then the hide is dropped in. The natural acids from the bark slowly bind to the skin, which stops it from decomposing. Over the next few weeks, the hide is moved through stronger solutions, and each new solution binds more acids to the proteins in the skin, which toughens the fibers. At the same time, it dyes the skin, making it darker. And when it's done, the leather is strong, durable, and resistant to rot. The animal is skinned, and the hide is...
Why are you screaming?
His friend shot an arrow at the gas canister on his head. You see, he had just joined a men's rafting group, and this was part of his initiation. But they were both drunk, and the arrow missed the can, hitting him instead. As it shot through his skull, it somehow missed all major blood vessels before coming out the back. And the man stayed conscious the entire time. Doctors treated him by drilling around the arrowhead and pulling the rest through. And even though he lost his eye, he survived without any brain damage. His friend shot an arrow at the gas canister on his head. You see, he had just joined a men's rafting group, and this was part of his initiation. But they were both drunk,
Go a little
and
bit
the arrow
higher.
missed the can, hitting him instead. As it shot through his skull, it somehow missed all major blood vessels before coming out the back. And the man stayed conscious the entire time. Doctors treated him by drilling around the arrowhead and pulling the rest through. And even though he lost his eye, he survived without any brain damage. They caught the shark and tied the line to the back of the boat. And as it began to swim, their boat actually started to move. You see, they had been lost at sea for weeks after their GPS failed. They drank salt water, ate raw fish, and fought to stay alive. And when they finally caught the shark, they rigged it up like an engine. And for 3 days, it dragged their boat across the ocean until it finally died. But in the distance, they saw an island. And after 33 days lost at sea, they finally reached land. They pulled a live eel out of the man's belly. You see, the man had come in complaining of severe pain. And when doctors pushed on his abdomen, it was rock hard. When they stuck a camera inside, they saw the eel, and it was moving. Now, some say this was part of some strange folk cure, but he never said how it actually got in there. Pulled a live eel out of the man's belly. You see, the man had come in complaining of severe pain.
Wait a
And when
minute.
doctors pushed on his abdomen, it was rock hard. When they stuck a camera inside, she would slide into the chair's hollow frame and hidden panels, folding her body tight inside. The magician wheels it out on stage, showing how normal the chair is from all angles. Then he throws the
Wait.
cloth over it and shakes it, letting the woman quickly open the chair and climb out. And just as she gets into position, the magician whips away the cloth, creating the illusion that she appeared from nowhere.
Okay, bye guys.
She would
We're gonna
slide
end the
into
video.
the chair's hollow frame and hidden panels, folding